Hi, everyone. I'm Tessie Amore from the University of Hawaii, and here today with us for our horticulture legend, we have Dr. Robert Polomski from Clemson University. Bob, we're looking forward to your stories about horticulture and your horticultural journey.
Well, Tessie, I am just so honored and flattered that you consider me to be a horticultural legend. But let's go ahead and ask away.
Well, tell us about yourself, like where are you working now and your journey to get to where you are.
Okay, so presently I am an extension specialist at Clemson University. My program is involved in horticulture, consumers, as well as the green industry. And I'm also involved in arboriculture, so I do work with urban foresters as well. I also teach, which is fun for me, a landscape plant identification and use class, as well as a course that I've titled Trees in the Built Environment. It's just enables students to learn how do we create this urban forest in our built spaces.
Ooh, that sounds really nice. Building green space all around us.
Exactly. And learning how we can cohabitate with trees that provide all of these services for us.
Great. Now tell us, how did you get to this position where you can teach people all about the green industry and all the wonders of the plant world? How did it all start?
Wow. That's a very long story, but I'm going to try to give you the high points. It wasn't a straight line, as I've learned from other of my colleagues. Mine was rather more convoluted. So when I think about how did I get involved, I'm just going to just briefly go back to when I was 5 years old, and that's when I remember working with my grandfather, who came from Poland, and so he only spoke Polish, but I was able to understand him and communicate with him. And the times I spent with him in the garden were just invaluable. And growing up in New Jersey with him having a rabbit hutch and chickens and all these amazing vegetables and that beautiful sweet cherry tree, I feel that's where I made this connection to horticulture. But let's now go fast forward. So after I earned my bachelor's degree from Cook College in horticulture, I went to Blacksburg, Virginia, Virginia Tech, a master's degree in pomology. Dr. John Barton was my advisor. And then after I completed that master's degree, I went into the private sector for a bit. And I remember one of my positions, I was an assistant manager in West Long Branch, New Jersey, at a franchise garden center. And I learned very quickly, Tess, that I'm not really that interested in the profit side of things. I did find myself on a number of occasions teaching people about the plants that they're wanting to purchase. And just between you and me, there are times when I thought that, well, this plant would not be appropriate for them. They just don't have the skill level and it's probably inappropriate for the site. But in any event, I realized pretty quickly that I really love to learn and I love sharing that information with others. And so an opportunity opened up in 1987 at the Fairfax County Extension Office in Northern Virginia. And I spent 3 years there. And surprisingly, perhaps for some, I was a turf agent. I worked with professional grounds managers. And so you may wonder, how does a guy who studies tree fruit, apples in particular, go into turf? Well, as you and we've discussed this before we went on air, it's just this passion that we have for horticulture, for to borrow a title from a book, light eaters. We just love plants and turf. Though some people may consider it an agronomic crop, others may say it's a horticultural crop, but it's a plant. And for me, it was just so much fun. And then after my 3 year stint in Northern Virginia with Fairfax Cooperative Extension Service, I went to Clemson University, where I assumed the role of the South Carolina State Master Garden Coordinator. And then I was also the Consumer Horticulture Information Coordinator. So, in July of 1990, consumer horticulture, not many people knew about that.
I didn't even know there was a term such as that.
That's right. And now you're not the only one. Administrators kind of wondered, why did Dan Lineberger, who had, after I was hired, a few months later left for Texas A&M? Not that I had anything to do with it, but the administrators had wondered, what is this consumer horticulture? Why was this person hired? But as you know, over time, consumer horticulture has just gained a lot of traction. And in my job there, it was just so much fun for me to be able to work in print and digital technologies. I had radio program. I did television programs. For 13 years, I was a question and answers columnist for Horticulture Magazine, one of the oldest magazine in the U.S. So it gave me all these fabulous opportunities to spread horticultural information to others. And as I do recall, I created a definition for a master gardener, which applies to us, where it's essentially a person who desires to learn horticultural principles and practices and has this willingness to share that information with others. And that essentially encapsulates who I am. And then if I may, I realize I'm really dominating the floor here. But I have to tell you, in my mid-40s, I had a midlife crisis. And so unlike, I'm not sure what women do when they're faced with a midlife crisis, but men typically, they have a divorce, they buy that red sports car, and they just do something completely different. Well, I took another route. I went to graduate school.
Wow, that was your midlife
Crisis, and that was the way I dealt with it. And so I started in 2003, and 6 years later, I earned my PhD, where I had done some really wonderful work with looking at nitrogen and phosphorus remediation with a number of aquatic ornamental plants. And that enabled me from that point on to continue my research interests, and they've evolved into looking at evaluating the landscape worthiness of plants and their role in sustainable landscapes. At the same time, looking at urban tree species and looking at ways of how we can maintain them to improve their health as well as their longevity. And of course, we mentioned teaching, and you're an excellent instructor. As I've learned, that enabled me to go into the classroom to work with undergraduate and graduate students and share this passion, enthusiasm for our discipline.
Let's backtrack a little bit. So where did you go for your PhD?
I actually was at Clemson University, so I did have a 6-month period of time when I was able to focus on my studies, but most of the time it was evenings, weekends, late at night.
Oh my goodness.
And I really haven't told that many people this, but we all know that education is hard. Learning is hard. It's almost, I equate it to heavy lifting. But also with horticulture, with my graduate program, at least with the PhD program, it was also very physical. And so there were times when I would actually have to collect data, and I'm not asking for sympathy. 2 a.m, I'd be in the greenhouse. And I started the day at 8 a.m. But these are things that we just have to do to acquire these answers. Nature is not that cooperative. And so that's why we have to conduct these experiments, and we have to collect the data. And it's something that you can't escape from. But it was something that I felt tempered me and had made me, I feel, a stronger individual, and I think a better horticulturist.
Well, that experience neatly segues into what I want to ask you also about advice for students and young horticulturists, because you did address the challenges of being a grad school and holding down a career and having a family. And we talk about work-life balance. And so what advice do you have for students, young professionals? Because you did take the scenic route.
That's right. Well, as I reflect over my journey, not only the career aspects of it, but the graduate school, what I do encourage graduate students, and I would like to say, young, middle-aged, or even mature individuals, I encourage all of you to get involved. it's really important that you join an organization, that you interact with the people in that organization. And so with us, and for me, my savior has been ASHS. And I have learned, becoming a member, and then over the years, the opportunities that this organization presents to particularly graduate students who really, we had no money, at that time. And just the opportunities that are presented to you, get involved. If you can, make presentations, join committees. The people that come to these meetings, are just so outgoing, and they're always interested in helping the people that were in their positions many years ago. And it's all about, and I talk about this ladder, our career ladder, that as we climb rung by rung, we have somebody above us to lend us a hand. And then we also have to remember, look back, reach down, and grab the hand of that person on that ladder and help them up. And I feel that in this environment that we're in, and in this conference here in Hawaii, I heard of all these discussions in hallways, in the meeting rooms, and I have engaged with a number of people. And it's just this environment of collaboration. For me, it just excites me, it recharges my batteries, and it gives me so much hope for those next generations of people coming up or climbing that ladder to push our discipline even further forward.
You know, as I listen to your words, we realize, or I realize, that we're not only growing plants, we're also cultivating people.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And people relationships. And I think that's a very interesting, or quite a great affirmation of the work we do as horticulturists.
That's right. And so I just love how you use that term about how we grow people, because I do feel in this organization, but even in horticulture itself, something that has appealed to me so much is what I call the nexus between people and plants. And I love working in that area because of the connections that the plants make, that the connections between people and the plants, but also how we can interact with people if they're professionals, to help them grow a very profitable crop. And it's for also those people that are, especially, I love the newbies, the people that are new to gardening, and engaging with them. And you share this passion for plants. And in our jobs, we're problem solvers at times. We're also cheerleaders, and so just trying to help the industry or the consumer become a better horticulturist just really excites me. And it's just really important to all of us.
That's true. When you think about it, we do a lot of these education, and it circles back. I think as I talk to you, we keep circling back to educating people, whether they're students in the university or colleagues or your stakeholders in consumer horticulture and the consumers in general.
Exactly. You mentioned the stakeholders. That's really important as well. Yes.
So we are one big plant family after all.
You're exactly right.
So what excites you more? You talked about the past and going up the ladder. As you go up, what do you see for the future? What do you envision?
Oh my. Oh my. I know I sound rather enthusiastic right now, but when I am looking forward, I am just really so excited for our industry, for our academic institutions, because horticulture, as I've seen this landscape for quite some time, and as you can tell from the color of my natural gray, I've seen a lot from that Green Revolution, which I think it was like from 1950 to 1984. And then we're having these various economic issues that impact the housing industry, which impacted horticulture. And then when COVID came, I really feel that with COVID, it had transformed the global economy, but also people. It has changed them. But when I look at it from a horticultural standpoint, being in our homes, having our staycations, I felt had created this connection between people and their outdoor environment. And so when I think about horticulture and what excites me so much is how I look at what the breeders are presenting us in the marketplace with the wide array of colors and sizes of these plants. When I think also about edimentals, plants that have ornamental and edible value. I see these plants that are so beautiful that we can actually consume them as well. And that's a really fabulous area. And then when I consider the whole houseplant and succulent market, and I see all these social media influencers just spreading the word of horticulture and getting people engaged with plants. But I do have to say, Tessie, that what has really changed me, and as I look at the future very positively, what has changed me years ago when we would talk about landscape plants or ornamental plants in general, we'd always ask, so what is this plant going to do for me? Right? My New York accent, what are you going to do for me? All right. But now we ask, what are you going to do for us? And so now, and with the people that are now or engaged in horticulture or considering that, the question that we ask is, what are these plants going to do for our ecosystem? And that's where things have changed so much with Dr. Talamy and his work about bringing nature home. It's about looking at our landscape as this large ecosystem of insects, of pollinators. I know we've got disease problems, whatever, but we have to now realize that when we add these plants to our landscape, it's just not to make Bob happy, but it's to create a resource, sustenance for pollinators. And then I wanted to make sure I got this in. When I think about horticulture, for me, it sustains, it nurtures our bodies and it sustains our souls. It's that complete package of affecting us at the physical, at the emotional level. And I'm just so delighted that, and we have to go back to ASHS because when I met you for the first time and so many other people, it's like, oh my gosh, you get it. You understand all these thoughts in my head and the value that I find in this society of like-minded individuals. And despite the fact that we work in different areas, the end game is the same. It's all about advancing horticultural science, but also remembering, again, you said that, growing the people that are engaged with plants.
Wow, that is profound. And I think this is a perfect cap to our discussion, that we are growing ourselves because we have to grow ourselves too. We're growing the people around us and we're growing the environment.
Exactly. And I would like to just close with this, that with organizations like ASHS, I think of also Seed Your Future, with the weekly emails I get reading about all of these opportunities that horticulture offers. I just wish I could turn the clock back 40 years. But I think about them. I also think about Niche, the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture. We all know now, with all of these players who are advancing horticulture, that the future is bright and green.
And with that, we'd like to say thank you for joining us and keep growing with us.
This was fabulous, Tessie. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you.